Hello there, Ramblers, and welcome back to Reese Rambles, my weekly podcast all about the latest comings and goings, movings and shakings, and indeed all the rest of it in the worlds of vintage and retro computing, gaming, and technology. Hope you're doing well out there. And first, of course, as always, we have the weather forecast here in the UK. Although I guess it's less of a forecast and more of a kind of an observation, I suppose. It's getting dark, and it's getting cold, and it's getting windy, and winter is very much almost upon us, it is starting to feel. But anyway, you're not here for the weather. Well, I know some of you are, based on my kind of retention graphs and analytics and whatnot. So you can go now. But as for the rest of you who are interested in the vintage and retro computing side of things, I do have a very interesting story to kick us off this week. And it's all about this thing, the Mediator PCI adapter for the Amiga 4000 computer. That's right, and now you can actually you can run Linux on your Amiga 4000, and there is actually a driver for this rather impressive piece of hardware. So this has been reported over on foronics.com, of course, fantastic place for all sorts of Linux-related news. And the headline here is new in 2025, Linux patches enable PCI support for the Amiga 4000, written by Michael Larrabell. So, for any Amiga 4000 hobbyists running a Linux M68K operating system, a PCI driver was finally published 3 decades later. For Linux, patches posted for mainline Linux kernel review today enable the Mediator 4000 PCI bridge available for the Amiga 4000 computer from the early 90s. Commodore's Amiga 4000 computer, powered by the Motorola CPU, parallel ATA-based storage up to 18 megabytes of RAM, and later on came the ability to have PCI adapters via replacement expansion boards. The Mediator PCI 4000 by Lbox is one such expansion board for providing 5 PCI slots that are PCI 2.1 compliant with a 33 megahertz PCI clock. So there we go. This is a piece of hardware that allows you to add 5 PCI ports to your Amiga 4000 if you are one of the very, very lucky people out there who happen to own one of these machines. Of course, there has been a Motorola 68K version of Linux available for a very long time now, and you can indeed run it on some of the kind of higher-end 68K based systems like the 4000. And if you have one of these, you can now use your PCI cards with it. Or at least you will be able to once this has kind of passed review and whatnot. So this has been submitted as an RFC, essentially. It's I think it stands for request for comment, something like that. And it means that it's in the very early stages. It's a bit rough around the edges, as per the author's own admission as well. So this series, this is the author speaking here, by the way, Daniel Palmer, the author of the driver, I should say. This series adds a driver for the Mediator 4000 PCI bridge for the Amiga 4000. Since this is my first PCI driver, it's probably awful. So this is an RFC, and also there is one interesting unsolved bit. As far as I can tell, the Mediator 4000 cannot do DMA between normal memory and the PCI cards, but PCI cards can DMA between themselves. In the Amiga OS drivers, a bounce buffer is allocated on one of the cards that contains memory, like a graphics card, and that is used for PCI DMA. I'm not sure if that's even possible to do in Linux. That sounds like a very interesting technical challenge, doesn't it? I've managed to use a network card that doesn't need DMA so far, but I'm having trouble getting a Voodoo 3000 or Radeon 9250 graphics card to come up properly. I guess no one tests their cutting-edge graphics drivers on non-x86 machines. So there is a link here to the, of course, the Linux kernel mailing list to that RFC if you want to get involved in that and add your hardware and programming experience to that effort. But yeah, I'll always kind of shout this stuff from the rooftops. Of course, this new support for all of this ancient hardware. And this got me quite curious because, of course, the Amiga's not really my area of expertise. I wanted to kind of find out when this Mediator PCI adapter was released and kind of what the story was behind it, and the story behind Lbox, the company that makes it. So I went looking for their website, and I was very pleasantly surprised indeed, because they are still in business, and their website is still delightfully 90s. I mean, copyright 1999 to 2025, it says at the bottom here in the footer. And it doesn't look like the design of this website has changed since 1999, and I am all for it, this era of late 90s web design, I must say. So very, even if you don't have a particular interest in picking up one of these cards, and they do have an online store, I will say. You can actually go and purchase one brand new today for, 320 euros. This looks like kind of a bigger, more sophisticated version of this hardware, but they do a few different versions, and of course, some other bits and pieces, add-ons for the Amiga, so IDE interfaces and all that kind of stuff, if you want to go and check that out. As well as your kind of more run-of-the-mill adapters and network cards and things. But yeah, of course, the focus here is on their main website, which is bloody lovely. I mean, look at this. I mean, if you're listening to this, on your drive to work or whatever on your podcast platform, you can't look at this, but please do go and check it out when you get a chance. This probably even works on your old, retro operating systems, on your old school browser as well. Looking at it, this is great. So anyway, yeah, that's some great news to kick us off for our 133rd Ramble. Running Linux on your Amiga 4000, you can now use the Mediator PCI interface, or you will be able to soon, once a couple of little bits and pieces are sorted. Hey, it is what it is. As I'm sure you're well aware by now, I am a huge fan of Windows 95, which of course celebrated its 30th anniversary this year, believe it or not. I still remember installing that on our very first PC, and I must have been 11 years old at the time. So, a whole lifetime ago. But I am, of course, still a huge fan of the Windows 95 aesthetic and those very promising 90s days of computing when stuff was just moving so quickly, those early 3D accelerators, people starting to get online, multimedia, as they called it at the time, the ability to play videos and stuff from CD-ROMs really did start to feel like the future was upon us. And as I was discussing with my next-door neighbour only earlier today, the past 20 years, I must say, in comparison, have been rather disappointing, I will say, for those of us who kind of lived through those heady years of computer advancement. That's not the right word, is it? Anyway, I saw this pop up on some of the social sites earlier this week, and I really like the look of this. I know absolutely nothing about it, about the people making the game or anything like that, the story behind it, but I wanted to bring it to your attention because I'm a big fan of the aesthetic and, of course, that Windows 95 connection. So, this is a game called Factory 95, and this is going to be released early next year. Q1 2026 is what they are targeting. Let's just hit play on the intro video here. And this is one of those automation type games, those factory type games. So Satisfactory, I think, is kind of one of the bigger ones in that space. I really got into a game called Dyson Sphere Program a few years back, and I think I played it really intensively for about a week and then had to walk away from it and never went back to it. But again, it's about setting up these kind of automated production lines for churning out stuff. And in this case, in the case of Factory 95, as you can see here, very much uses the Windows 95 look and feel for all of the the windows and stuff. They have absolutely nailed the look here, I will say. And you know what? Let's just read the actual description from the Steam page. So, Factory 95 is a retro Windows-inspired automation game about making a slideshow factory in a slideshow. Manage your space, make increasingly complex slides, and worry about Y2K in this minimalistic factory builder. So, this is based around kind of those very early versions of PowerPoint on Windows 95. That's what they based the interface and kind of the workflow, I guess. So if you're the kind of person who enjoys making presentations, I guess this is the game for you. But it's developed and published by Macrobit Interactive. I have no idea who these guys are. Let's click through and see if they've made any other games. Oh, they have one called Cardinal Descent, which is a card-building roguelike where you craft elemental synergies and find game-breaking sticker combos. Now, this is like one of those Dota-type games, isn't it? I've never really played this kind of stuff. Looks interesting. Again, nice aesthetic. I like it. But that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about Factory 95. We've got some screenshots here on the Steam page. I mean, look at that. They've even got scan lines on here and the kind of the screen distortion that you would expect from a CRT monitor. So, very much, yeah, look at this. They've absolutely nailed the look and feel of this. I'm very, very impressed with this. Of course, whether the gameplay is actually any good remains to be seen. But we'll take a look at a bit more of the description here. Explore a retro operating system as you complete tasks from your emails and download upgrades from the World Wide Web. Your factories are built in a slideshow making software, so you only have limited space to design systems and move resources. Send slides between pages, use filters, splitters, and copy-paste buildings to create complex slides in a compact space. With multiple game modes and hundreds of possible slides to create, you can flex your graphic design muscles and earn that long-awaited promotion. And the features here are a retro Windows 95 inspired aesthetic, complex automation puzzles, hundreds of possible slide combinations, lots of options for creating slides, including colours, patterns, content and transitions, original Windows 95 inspired OST. Oh, is it going to have like Canyon.mid and Passport.mid? Those old MIDI files from Windows 95. I guess they probably can't use those directly, but music inspired by those. I like this even more now. A laid-back problem-solving experience with no lose state. I'm also a big fan of that as well. This will run on anything as far back as Windows 7 on a Core i3 with 700 megabytes of RAM. What? And 700 megabytes of available space. And an OpenGL 2.1 compatible graphics card, or even indeed integrated graphics. So completely undemanding game as well in and of itself. I'm very interested in this. I mean, even like the logo here, they've used this kind of Office 95 clip art style for that. So this is very much up my street and something that I'm going to be keeping an eye on. Looks like they've got some news here as well. This is from a month ago, celebrating 1,600 wish lists in a week. So who knows? How many people have wishlisted this? I guess it doesn't say. It doesn't say. Still, just want to wish the developers all the best, and I shall certainly be back. I am now following them over on Blue Sky, and I'm not logged into Steam at the moment, but I have wishlisted this myself as well on my account. Looks very good. Links will be in the usual places down in the description. This is not a sponsored thing. Just spotted this and thought it looked in my wheelhouse. Some local news now from the city where I grew up, Leicester, here in the East Midlands in sunny old England. And I am indeed just but a few miles from Leicester as I sit here and record this. Now, it's a city with which I am very familiar, of course, not only shopping in the day at the weekend, but also going out in the evenings as well. Not a brilliant night out, Leicester, I will say, but it is what it is. It's the place I grew up, like I say. Surprisingly, quite an interesting retro scene, a retro gaming scene in Leicester. That have actually historically been some very interesting retro shops. I remember specifically there was one in the Silver Arcade, it was called. It was on the very top floor. And they had like a proper old mechanical jukebox and stuff in there. And I always used to pop in there. I had guitar lessons in Leicester with my friend Nathan when I was a kid. And then we used to pop into town for a bit afterwards. And we'd always go and bother the guy in the retro shop, even though we never had any money. And I'm very pleased to see that this proud tradition is indeed continuing. So there's a story here over on timeextension.com, who also happen to be based not a million miles from Leicester. They are local to me, and I know they are featured on this podcast quite a lot. And it's not because of that local connection. I always forget that they're local. I've never actually met these guys. So guys, if you're out there and you want to meet up and do something, do let me know. Henshin, which is a new Japan-focused indie store, hits the UK this month. And if you hadn't guessed from the rambling preamble there, it's in the glorious city of Leicester. So story here by Damien McFerrin, subtitle of Robots, Plushes, Vinyl and Japanese Video Games. So as you may or may not be aware, Time Extension parent company Hookshot Media is based in the English East Midlands, close to the historic city of Leicester, famous for The Elephant Man, Daniel Lambert, Shawaddy Waddy, Kasabian, 5,000-1 Premier League winners Leicester City. I remember when that happened. Actually, I was actually in my band at the time, Titan. Which, you can probably just about see the picture that's fallen off the wall behind me. And last but not least, the superb Leicester Vintage and Old Toy Shop. And that is there is actually a link, and they have done a whole feature on that as well. Wonderful shop in the city of Leicester. They've got all of your action figures and all that wonderful vintage stuff that you might expect. Well worth a visit, I will say. And I will link to that as well. But yeah, the focus of this particular story is a new shop, which has come from Joseph Hand, who runs that shop. And this one has more of a Japan focus. So the proprietor of the shop, Joseph Hand, has announced that a second store will soon be opening in the city, focusing on Japan-made goods and items. And that includes video games. Of course, this other shop doesn't necessarily, like I say, it's more kind of toy focused and that kind of thing. So cool to see a more kind of video game focused shop. And the grand opening is on Saturday the 18th of October, so it is a week away as at the time of this podcast going out. And they're advertising here goodie bags, Ichiban Kuji, goodie bags, Gunpla, Transformers, prize figures, wrestling, cult film, and Japanese video games. I love these little icons here. We've got some iconic Japanese characters, of course. We've got Totoro and Doraemon and Pikachu there, and I guess that's Godzilla, a couple of others. Apologies for my pronunciation, by the way. You won't believe I've been doing Japanese Duolingo for the past however many years. Anyway, we're thrilled to announce that Henshin will be opening on Saturday the 18th of October, says a statement on Facebook. We'll be rolling out at 9 a.m, offering free goodie bags to some of our first customers. We'll be in all day, providing customers with plenty of robots, prize figurines, blind boxes, more plushes than you've ever seen, boutique Blu-rays, vinyl, Japanese video games, wrestling merchandise, and Ichiban Kuji. I still don't know what that is. I should probably Google it. Oh, look at that. They've got a cool van as well. Oh, I like that. So, they're based... Oh, it's Silver Street. Very cool. So, at the old Leicester Military Basement Clothing Store, below ground level at 5 Silver Street, and almost directly opposite Super Game Shack. So, yeah, that's actually a really cool central location there. Excellent stuff. Excellent stuff indeed. I might have to go to this opening, you know. Should I go to the opening? Maybe make a bit of a video about it? Might give me something to do on a Saturday. Let me know down in the comments. Oh, and just on that previous story, I did say that I would Google Ichiban Kuji, didn't I? And then I completely and utterly forgot. Well, apparently it's some kind of raffle type system where everyone gets a ticket and then you get a prize and everyone's a winner. So there you go. Now you know. Anyway, yeah, while we are still on the subject of Japanese stuff and gaming, there has been some rather interesting Mario news this week, oddly enough, to do with a very, very old game indeed, the Super Mario Lost Levels from 39 years ago. And a speedrunner has discovered some hidden content in there. Well, not hidden content as such, but ways to make the game glitch out in rather interesting ways that leads to some previously undiscovered levels, if you want to call them that. Anyway, this is a story over on IGN.com by Rebecca Valentine, and the headline here is, "What am I playing, dude? Speedrunner finds previously undiscovered Mario levels after 39 years. Quick, gather round everyone," writes Rebecca. "New Mario levels just dropped. You heard me. New levels in Mario, specifically in Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, a game that first released in 1986, and which you'd think everyone had already discovered every single secret in." And there is an explanation towards the end of this story as to how this actually works and what this is all about. So we will continue. Nope, there was still more to find, and a speedrunner named Cosmic managed to uncover over 20 previously unseen and at times very glitchy playable levels in the game after a lot of community help, experimentation, patience, and jumping off springs. And we can see a screenshot of this so-called level here. Obviously, there's the old glitch with Pac-Man, isn't there, when you can get to like the secret level at the end where the whole screen's just completely and utterly glitched out, and that's essentially what people count as the end of the game, I think, so to speak. It's caused by some kind of overflow thing, and I don't understand how all that stuff works. I'm not an arcade speedrunning type person. Anyway, Cosmic has recorded his full journey in a 40-minute video here, and I highly recommend watching it because he does some crazy stuff and has a detailed explanation of how and why this works the way it does. But very, very basically, in the original Super Mario Bros. And its sequel, The Lost Levels, the game determines what level and world to send you to at the end of each level based on what object you use to clear the level. Grabbing a flagpole increases the area number by 1, while grabbing the axe on a castle bridge increases the world number. Your area number being the second number, so you've got world and area in Mario, of course. So the first level is 1-1, and then you go through 1-2, 1-3, 1-4, however it goes, and then you start on the next world. So that's 2-1, 2-2, 2-3. If that all makes sense, I think that all makes sense. I think people are familiar with the format by now. And you can actually, by using certain combinations of items, you can force the game to warp you to levels that don't actually exist technically, and go to these kind of glitched out bits of code in the game, which is really interesting. You'd think at some point in the previous 39 years that someone would have reverse engineered this and discovered this somehow, but apparently not. Apparently it's just been the result of a lot of trial and error by the speedrunning community and by this guy, Cosmic, in particular. So, then there's warp pipes. So for years, the Mario community has known about the infamous minus world glitch, an infinitely looping water level accessed by entering the warp zone in 1-2 in such a way that the zone doesn't fully load and the pipes aren't set up yet to send you to the correct world and area. In the original Super Mario Bros., doing this and then entering the far left or right pipes sends players to a level designated World -1 or minus world. In the Lost levels, this glitch was removed, but the pipes instead send players to whatever destination is currently loaded into its memory. But if you enter the pipe while moving, the warp zone can load after you've entered, and you can trick the game to send you to the very beginning of the area that the pipe wants to send you to. Does this make sense? I'm not sure this is making much sense to me. That's all pretty complicated, and honestly, it's making my head spin too. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you for confirming that it's not just me. Cosmic's explanation is the best one, but the even shorter version is that using a combination of flags, axes and pipes, you can manipulate the game into sending you into increasingly unhinged areas. I'm not going to read the rest of this story, but if you do want to read the details about it, it will be linked, of course, in the description and in the show notes if you are listening to this on your podcast platform of choice. But there are some rather wonderful screenshots here of these very kind of corrupted and broken levels. And of course, these are taken from this YouTube video, which I will also link to. And over the course of this 40-minute playthrough, Cosmic shows off 20 of these previously undiscovered so-called levels. And some of them are nearly identical to existing levels, and some of them are total messes, Rebecca Rise, as seen above. And eventually, Cosmic's game just completely and utterly crashed out, as you might expect. As to why these haven't been discovered yet, Cosmic has a theory, which is that fewer people have played Lost Levels compared to the first game, and the trick is deep into the game, like in bonus worlds and not even in the main worlds. So to see the full extent of the glitch, it only works on the All-Stars version, and it gets a bit technical. But the main reason I'd say is it's actually really hard. Which, yeah, if it was easy, I guess someone would have discovered it by now. But really interesting to see, again, these old games and kind of people pushing them to the limits and finding stuff that even the original developers never kind of intended. And yeah, 39 years. I mean, that's nearly as old as me. I haven't watched this video. I've added it to my watch later list on YouTube, and I want to sit down and actually watch it properly and kind of see what the process is behind this, because this looks absolutely fascinating, I will say. But there you go. New so-called levels found in Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels after 39 years. When I was a kid, I had an Atari STE, which you're probably aware of if you're a long-term viewer/listener, and it's probably not something that I talk about quite enough, but there you go. But as a kid, I had quite a limited selection of games available to me. I think I only knew one other kid at school who had an Atari ST, and my dad used to go to this Atari Club thing, which was I think it was like a monthly thing somewhere near where he worked up in Nottingham, and would occasionally come home with copied discs, these menu discs and stuff like that, Pompey Pirates and Automation and kind of those pirated collections of games. There was one in particular that I used to play a lot, and I used to play it in 2-player mode with a good friend of mine on a Friday night when he used to stay over. And that game was Bobble. And of course, at the time, I didn't know the kind of wider historical context of Bobble and what it was all about. I just thought it was a fun game, and the Atari ST port is particularly excellent, I will say. But of course, it's gone on to become one of my favourite arcade games of all time. If ever I spot a Bubble Bobble arcade machine, of course, I've got to play it. Of course, Puzzle Bobble is by far the more popular one. Bubble Bobble is quite rare, but always a regular feature on my main cabinet, and always one that I like to fire up on, Mister and stuff like that when I get the opportunity. And I highly recommend that you check it out if you haven't somehow after all these years. But essentially, the story of the game is that it's the sequel to Rainbow Islands, and you've got these two fat kids that look like eating lots of candy and stuff, making their way through these brightly coloured, rainbow islands, fighting all sorts of bugs and insects and things as they go. And at the end of that game, apparently they end up being turned into these dragon things, and then they then have to make their way through Bubble Bobble, which is apparently the sequel. I think that's my understanding of the story behind the game. Anyway. Not that the story is really important. Anyway, the reason I'm waffling on here about Bubble Bobble, one of my favourite games of all time, is because there is a new port for a rather iconic 8-bit system. And it's one that I'm sure a lot of you out there are familiar with. So, this is Bubble Bobble Remastered for the Commodore 64. Bubble Bobble C64 Remastered. Let's just open this video up so we can have a look at that in a second. Bubble Bobble C64 Remastered is a fan-made radical enhancement with all new graphics of the Commodore 64 version of Taito's Bubble Bobble. Is it Taito or Tato? I never know. We'll go with Taito, actually. Originally developed by Software Creations and published by Firebird in 1987. The game was met with critical and player acclaim upon release and is still regarded today as a great classic for the C64, as well as one of the best games ever released on the platform. I can't say I've played the original C64 version, I will say. The project was started in January 2025 by David Bottino, fantastic name, a retro games creator of Toki C64 Remastered, my goodness, and a journalist at Zap Magazine Italia, with the goal of improving the graphical fidelity of the C64 version while preserving its classic gameplay. I've got some great screenshots here as well, I will say. Here's what David says. Bubble Bobble was love at first sight. I was 11 years old when, at a friend's house, I first saw that little cassette from a newsstand bootleg edition called Bobble. What a great name. It only took a moment. Those vibrant colours, the lively graphics, the quirky characters, the tons of bonuses and power-ups to collect. The catchy music that got stuck in your head, and the stellar gameplay. Yes, that wonderful music absolutely drives you mad, doesn't it, on the arcade version? But I wouldn't have it any other way. Whether playing solo or co-op, every game felt like an epic adventure, with hours flying by in the desperate yet wonderful attempt to clear all 100 levels. The C64 version was my first encounter with Bubble Bobble, and it's with this version that I built my fondest memories. And the story goes on to basically a very similar kind of story to myself as well, how he went on to discover the arcade cabinet, of course, but always kept going back to that C64 version. And points out that it is indeed a bit of a flawed port, of course, trying to squeeze one of the kind of biggest and most sophisticated arcade games of its day onto the C64, which was a very limited machine. And of course, there's always corners that end up getting cut and compromises that need to be made, and that's just the nature of the beast. And I guess revisiting it with all these extra years of experience and modern development tools and stuff always gives us opportunities to enhance these older games. So we have the key goals here, and it is a hack of the original program rather than a complete rewrite, and it features fully redesigned sprites and backgrounds. The new graphics are directly converted from the arcade version, so that's cool, and they offer greater detail and fidelity to the original look and feel, while being optimised for both CRT and modern monitors to offer the best possible experience on real hardware and emulators alike. So this is version 1.0, released October the 6th, 2025. We got completely redesigned graphics, so Bob, the enemies, and the final boss, everything has had a full makeover, redrawn and animated pixel by pixel, straight from the arcade original. Most levels have been completely redesigned, and the rest have a nice polish or colour tweak. Some even proudly strut in 3 colours instead of just 2, so that's a big improvement. Food and bonus items are 100% juicier, and some even got swapped out for fresher ones. Pon is back when you pop the bubbles. Absolutely, the bubble popping noise and animation. And the font is also from the arcade version as well. So, yeah, a bit more of an authentic look there. And there have also been some fixes. So popped enemies dropping the right goodies. Secret doors and teleport doors have their own graphics now. Inaccuracies have been fixed. Potions, bombs, and screen flashes. Tiny little touches like that just make the whole game kind of feel a lot more authentic. And yeah, the old split second continue is now back, which apparently wasn't in the original C64 version. And a new intro as well. Beautiful fan-made loading picture. Kicks things off in style. And a new rendition of the iconic arcade tune. So, of course, a picture tells 1,000 words, and therefore a video, which is, 30 pictures per second, tells an awful lot more. So I guess we'll go watch the video. So, look at this. This is really impressive, considering this is running on the C64. Very, very recognisably the first level of Bobble. Very authentic to the arcade version, I will say. So that's a great start. Of course, this is a 23-minute long video, so I'm not going to sit and watch the entire thing. But yeah, level 2, very recognisable. Again, with that colour palette. As mentioned, some of these levels do have 3 colours, which this one certainly does. We've got the red, green and the blue here, in addition to, of course, the colours of the pickups and the enemies. And it's all so smooth and well animated and everything, isn't it? Yeah, my hat is off to you. This is really top quality. Top-notch port, I will say. Now, on the subject of the Commodore 64, I was very kindly sent some Commodore 64 stuff, which I have here on the shelf behind me, in shot in every single video that I do, which was sent to me by Bitterblitter, who has been a very, very long-term supporter of the channel. So thank you ever so much for sending this stuff over. And I really need to get around to making a video about the Commodore 64. So I've got a big document full of notes about that, and I'm going to have to add this to that video as well, as something that I need to check out. Hopefully, I'll get the chance to do that sooner rather than later. There are some big changes kind of happening here at the studio at the moment, which I'm not quite ready to talk about just yet. But yeah, anyway, going back to this port of Bobble specifically, it's available on itch.io, davesretroforge.itch.io. And it's name your own price. So essentially, you can download it for free if you like, but I would highly recommend that you at least chuck a little bit of money the author's way, just because it's nice to support these old projects and things. There's also a manual for this, which is really cool. But yeah, you can go download it for free if you like, or yeah, toss, what was the guy's name? David Bottino. Go and toss him a euro or two, let him buy himself a nice cup of coffee for his troubles. Wonderful stuff to see these remade and kind of reimagined ports of these iconic old games on these old systems. Top-notch stuff. So let's take a moment to talk about Windows XP, of course, Microsoft's release of Windows from 2001, and quite a revolutionary one in its own right, being that it was the first consumer or kind of home-focused version of Windows that used the NT kernel, of course the NT codebase, a complete departure from the DOS underpinnings of Windows 9X. Windows Millennium Edition, of course, was the kind of DOS-based Windows of the time. And all the better for it, I will say. Much better security, and I think some ideas and some concepts pinched from Unix, I think it's fair to say. A new file system as well, of course, NTFS. Just a real kind of turning point, and indeed kind of set the template and set the standard for Windows for the next 24 years at least. I mean, Windows 11, of course, still shares its roots in NT and is still very much kind of structured and architectured in a very similar way. And I think one of the kind of the most noteworthy things about XP, not just the new user interface and the new kind of underpinnings. One of the most noteworthy features of XP was, of course, its online activation, which was a new thing in Windows and starting to creep into various bits of software. Of course, not everyone was online at the time, which meant that they had to offer a phone activation option. And of course, that ended up becoming a huge backdoor, a huge loophole, which allowed stuff like keygens and things. So people could activate it and pirate it very, very easily, I will say. However, there was an even easier option, and indeed I had this installed on my PC at home back in the day when it was current, and I think pretty much everyone else I knew did too. So Sorry, Microsoft, but in our defence, we were young teenagers at the time, and probably wouldn't have bought it anyway. That's no defence, is it, for piracy? Yeah, I'm going to get some downvotes. Anyway, there's a story here over on Tom's Hardware, and this is about the most iconic of these kind of leaked and pirated version of Windows, which use the volume licensing key, which started with the characters FCKGW. Now, I actually still have a CD somewhere here in the studio. I actually went looking for it just before I sat down to record this story, but I couldn't find it, unfortunately. But I still have a CD that is handwritten, that was one of mine from back in the day, with that volume licensing key written on the top. And finally, after all of these years, the person behind this, the person who was in charge of kind of implementing, or at least involved with implementing this volume licensing key in Windows XP, has spoken up and actually told a bit of the story behind how this all came to be and how this all works. And I thought this was fascinating. This is over on tomshardware.com. Story by Mark Tyson. And it starts by saying it would have taken most people more than 24 hours to download the XP ISO and key back in 2001, which, 700 megabyte download. Of course, that's not how many of us would have obtained it. We would have had friends with CD burners and the like. And there's a nice picture here of Bill Gates from the Windows XP launch as well. Anyway, the legendary Microsoft developer behind Task Manager, zip folders, and Windows Product Activation, WPA, has revealed the true story behind FCKGW, RHQQ2, YXRKT, 8TG6W, 2B7Q8. So nostalgic seeing that written down again. Some of you oldsters out there, this video is probably going to get banned now, isn't it? Some of you oldsters out there might be familiar with this code, but even if not, it is probably recognisable as some kind of software key. This garbled alphanumeric string actually represents the first valid Windows XP volume licensing key that fell into the hands of software pirates. Now, Dave W. Plummer has taken to X to confirm it was a disastrous leak rather than a clever hack. And Plummer knows quite a lot about WPA, which debuted alongside XP in 2001, as he played a key role in its early development during his time at Microsoft. Specifically, the seasoned Windows software engineer worked on how WPA generated hardware IDs and validated product keys. This system represented a big change compared to how prior Windows keys works. Due to its cunning mating of software and hardware IDs, WPA would have been a significant barrier to illegitimate copying and redistribution of Windows XP, except for one thing. As Plummer reveals in his post, this infamous license key was leaked, famously by the Wares Group Devil's Own, 5 weeks before the official release of this seminal version of Windows. And it basically goes on to say, so of course the reason you needed the online activation or the telephone activation is because XP would generate a hardware key which was unique to your hardware, and then the serial number, the activation key, was derived from that using some kind of mathematical formula that was supposedly only supposed to be known to Microsoft. But there were some whitelisted volume licensing keys for corporate customers that were baked into Windows and couldn't be revoked, and this was the first of them. And as the story goes on to say, this was leaked weeks before Windows XP was even officially released, and it was the one that most of us went on to use. Now, that's a summary of the story, but it does go into a lot more detail, of course, as you might expect from Tom's Hardware. I'm not going to sit here and read the entire thing, but very much a trip down memory lane for me, of course. I will say, I should point out that I do pay for all of my software and games and things nowadays. Now I can afford it. Now I am no longer a kid. But really interesting times in the world of software piracy and stuff. Of course, CD burners becoming very, very popular around the turn of the millennium. Napster, of course, being a thing at the time. Music piracy, and later on stuff like Kazaa and Morpheus and LimeWire and, movie downloads, TV episodes. I was there for all of it. Not proud of it, but it's how I learnt a lot of the skills that have served me very well in the software industry and in adulthood. And nowadays with everything kind of being cloud-based and whatnot, I think those days are very much behind us, quite sadly. Implications for software preservation and all of that kind of stuff, which I do talk about a lot in these rambles. But Interesting to hear, straight from the horse's mouth, the story behind this legendary volume licensing key for Windows XP. Please do go and give the story a read over on tomshardware.com. But yeah, a very interesting period in history. Indeed, in the world of Windows. One topic that comes up again and again here on Reese Rambles is that of computer museums, or indeed arcades, any of these kind of physical establishments trying to preserve our gaming and computing history. And the reason I keep bringing up things like this, and indeed over on my main channel as well, of course I've covered the Northwest Computing Museum and a few others. The reason this keeps coming up is because it's something that I am indeed very passionate about. I like to visit these places when I can and try to support them because everything is computers nowadays. Of course, gaming being the biggest kind of entertainment industry in the world, and everything being computerized. All of us walking around with computers in our pockets and sat kind of using them all day, every day, for better or for worse. It's a very, very important part of our cultural heritage, and it's a big part of why I do what I do here. So I think a new computing museum, or indeed gaming museum, is something to be celebrated. I think there's a lot of kids kind of growing up now with these mobile games and things who could do well to learn a bit about the history of where all of that stuff came from. So I'm very pleased to read about this week a new computing museum that has just been launched, and this one has a very interesting twist indeed. So let's head over to the BBC News website and see what this is all about. Father and son convert school bus into gaming museum. That's right. So a story here by George Carden, as I say, on BBC News website. Jason and Luke Stoner have started a computer and gaming museum in a converted school bus. When 19-year-old Luke Stoner visited a museum on the history of computers, it sparked an idea inside him to start his own museum on wheels. Luke and his dad Jason have spent the last year converting an old school bus into a computer and gaming history museum. They've started a charity, Retro Reset, and have been running workshops at local schools and colleges with the aim of inspiring young people to join the industry. Luke from Heathfield in East Sussex told BBC Radio Sussex, "It really inspired me to have a museum that wasn't in one place. We can take it anywhere to schools and youth clubs." That's a really cool concept, isn't it? So yeah, they're fitting out this old school bus and they drive it around to the local schools and youth clubs and let the kids get hands-on with these old computers. Nice to see they've got some BBC micros in here. Excellent, excellent stuff. Jason, 52, said, Luke just said a lot of his friends can't go there, they can't afford it, and he'd really like to build a bus and take it round to people to inspire them. We're mad enough to have built it, and here we are. They started the process in September last year after visiting the Centre for Computing History, which has provided some of the equipment to help them. Yes, of course, a fantastic museum that, one that I visited and indeed exhibited at last year. They bought the bus in January, refurbished it, and held their first workshops in July. The bus has an old computer previously used to edit Hollywood films, which students can take apart and study. Oh, what's that? Surely not something like a Quantel paint box. That was a very, very rare machine indeed. Anyway. It has 10 different computers and consoles from the 90s. They've got a Dreamcast, an N64, and an Atari 2600 from 1978. All excellent choices, I will say. The purpose is to inspire people into retro computing, said Luke. When children study computer science at school, it's all theory-based. They don't see inside a computer and get to take it apart, Jason added. Hopefully, it will inspire them to see the history, where it's come from, and where it might go in the future. I can't tell you how proud I am of Luke. Luke is on the autistic spectrum and he has gone to every meeting, spent hours painting the bus. I think it's every father's dream to be able to do with one of their children, and look what we have achieved. Everywhere we go, the children like it. That's really, really cool. What a great story. Jason and Luke, a father and son team, who have built this mobile computing museum in Sussex. And if you are lucky enough to be a member of a school or a youth club in the local area, they might be paying a visit to you soon. No information here on how you can visit it yourself, but hey, it's always something to be celebrated, isn't it? And yeah, you know, young guy is 19 years old, taking an interest in our computing history, helping people to get hands-on with stuff like BBC micros. I'm very, very much on board with that. So good job, guys. And that, my dearest ramblers, of course, brings us around rather neatly to my regular Videos of the Week feature. Yep, that's right. I've renamed this from Video of the Week to Videos of the Week because I've always got more than one for you. So let's commit to doing that in the future. In fact, I've actually got four videos for you this week, and they are quite the mixed bag of interesting stuff. Some of them being retro computing and gaming related, some of them not. And we're just going to have to dive straight into these because I've got quite a lot of stuff to cover. This, of course, is stuff that I've watched over the past week here on the YouTubes that has entertained or inspired or enlightened or otherwise improved my life in some small way. I've completely and utterly butchered that intro, but we're going to roll with it. So this is the first one, and just a very quick mention here because this isn't computing related, but nice to see that Rush are going on tour again after 10 years off, of course, the death of their iconic drummer Neil Peart 10 years ago from cancer, quite sadly. And the other two guys decided to kind of retire from music, but they have announced this week that they are taking on a new drummer, and she is bloody excellent. And also they're going to be taking on a keyboard player as well to free Geddy Lee up so he can prance about the stage in the way that only a bass-playing, long-haired hippie frontman can. Am I a huge Rush fan? Am I one of those kind of weird people that are into them in an obsessive kind of way? No, not really, but they are a fantastic, iconic, classic band. And I just wanted to mention that because I watched this video this week, and the reception to this from their fans has been overwhelmingly positive. I don't think I've seen a single negative comment. Always a tricky thing to replace a member of a band, particularly when they've been going for a very long time, and they've done this very much right. So there you go. That's Rush, but of course that's not really related to this podcast at all. I just like to talk about my love for kind of live rock music and that kind of stuff. And it would be cool if I get an opportunity to see these guys at some point here in the UK. So do Wembley. Do a couple of dates at Wembley at least, please, if you are watching this, which you almost definitely are. So back on topic. This is a video I watched last night on my TV. I was getting ready for bed and I stuck it on. And this is on, of course, this is Alec from Technology Connections. And this is his second channel, Technology Connextras, where he does kind of off-the-cuff, unscripted type stuff. And I was actually really interested in what he had to say on this subject, because this is all about kind of physical media and preservation, stuff like that. And he is a big collector of DVD box sets of old kind of 90s sitcoms and sci-fi stuff, movies, that kind of thing. Pretty much anything and everything. And he's talking about his experience in buying some of these box sets and saying that actually he's noticed this really interesting trend where there have been reissued versions of box sets where they've actually got kind of fewer DVDs in the set or whatever. They're kind of cost-reduced re-releases of these kind of slightly older box sets. Of course, DVD being quite an older format in and of itself now anyway. He's just taking a moment to talk about his socks here as well. Apparently he's launched a sock subscription service. I don't know. Best of luck with that. But he started ripping some of these DVDs that he's been buying and has noticed that some of the kind of the second reissues of these, they actually use single layer DVDs and they're much, much lower bit rates than the initial releases of the box sets. And yet, quite often among collectors, the kind of later releases of the DVD box sets are the ones that are more desirable. Even though the kind of the picture and the audio quality is lower on those. And I'm doing a terrible job of explaining what this is all about, but it's an 18-minute long video. He talks about some examples of this from his own collection and some of the technical information behind it, as you would expect. And I just thought this was a really fascinating watch because, I've got a big box here of all of my old DVDs and stuff that I rescued from my loft a while ago. Never watched them, probably never will. Probably won't even get around to ripping them. But, a collection, this physical media is, perhaps the best way to preserve some of these old movies and stuff. And I'm not just about game and software preservation here at Reese Rambles. I think all of our cultural heritage is important and to be celebrated and to be preserved. And this is very useful stuff to know. So thank you, Alec, for putting this video together, talking about this previously unheard of phenomenon, at least to me. Video number 3 for you this week is, this is one that I've seen pop up absolutely everywhere, and I finally got around to watching it. It's James' channel. I'm a regular viewer of James' channel anyway. I think his shenanigans are rather amusing, even though he is responsible for the destruction of some rather nice vintage hardware at times. And this video is no exception. Although, to be fair, this is an original Xbox. They made millions of the bloody things, and this one was faulty to start with. He turns it into an Xbox Portable. It's a complete and utter bodge job, as you might expect from James' channel, but it's funny. It's, of course, doesn't take this seriously at all in that way that he does. And I think parts of this are actually really, really clever in some of the technical challenges and cobbling this thing together and coming up with a kind of working result at the end of it. Not something I'd ever dare do on my own channel. But yeah, I've seen this absolutely everywhere. 758,000 views in 3 days, and deservedly so. It's a stupid project. It's a lot of fun, but at the same time, it's very, very clever. So if you've had this come up in your recommendations, and you probably have, and you haven't quite got around to watching it yet, consider this my personal recommendation. I will also say that he is quite knowledgeable on the subject of the original Xbox and this original hardware and stuff, and does talk a little bit about some interesting kind of historical and technical points of this console and challenges that he had to overcome to try to get this to work. So, hey, it's also kind of educational as well. 33 minutes long. It's a longer video, so watch it over dinner or whatever if you are going to watch it, or perhaps, as I quite often do, stick it on in the background while you're working on your own projects. And finally, this one could not pass me by this week. I haven't had the chance to sit down and watch this yet, but I watch these every single year. This is an hour and a half long, and I'd just like to set aside some time to kind of sit and give these my full attention because they are always brilliant. This is the Vintage Tech YouTubers discussion panel from VCF Midwest 20. VCF, of course, being the Vintage Computer Federation's annual show. And they have all of these tech YouTubers here, of course, giving talks and having their own kind of exhibits and tables and things that they show off. I'm not going to attempt to name everybody here because I am going to inevitably miss some people. But of course, we've got Adrian, we've got Jason, of course, from This Week in Retro. I'm falling into the trap of naming everyone, haven't I? But of course, we've got Clint, we've got 8-Bit Guy, as usual. And also Polymat, which is great to see because I'm a huge fan of Polymat. He's a bloody great guy. He's a lovely guy in real life, and his YouTube channel is going from strength to strength. Makes really, really excellent videos. He's one I always try to give a bit of a shout out to where I can. And great to see him as part of this discussion panel as well. So I haven't had the chance to actually watch this, but very well produced. Of course, we've got Jim Leonard, Trickster, from the old school PC, presenting this, and of course doing the technical side, the editing, and then kind of putting these videos together and putting them out there, which is all very much appreciated as always. So big thank you to Jim. And I very much enjoy watching this. He's used ultra widescreen aspect ratio, so if you've got one of those ultra wide monitors, you can actually watch this in its glorious native aspect ratio, and indeed a ratio that does very much suit this format of panel as well. And great to see. So I very much look forward to watching this one. There you go. Four videos of the week for this week. We've got Rush, who've announced that they've reunited with a new drummer. 4 minutes 46, that one. We've got Technology Connextras, of course, Technology Connection's second channel, talking about DVD box sets and how the re-releases of those are often way inferior to the original releases. Interesting stuff. We've got the James channel, destroying an original Xbox and turning it into something incredibly janky and glorious. And finally, that panel from VCF Midwest this year. And I really, really would like to make it to America at some point, to make it to a VCF. I just haven't quite got around to it yet. But I do know and chat to quite a few of the people involved in these. So never say never. In fact, pretty much say, yes, I will at some point, I promise. Now, whether I'll be invited to be part of the channel as the token British bloke, I'm not sure. But you never know. And so, sadly, as is always the case with these things, our time together for this week's Ramble must draw to a close, but not first without thanking, of course, all of my wonderful Discord members who have contributed stories and also the wider conversation around them and the wider world of retro this week. So big thank you to Gravitone, Technic, DBK, Menemo, and Jaruzel. Or is it Jarazel? Something like that. Anyway. And of course, if you want to join the Discord and join the conversation, and indeed the wider ranging conversation, which includes weather and boating and all sorts of stuff at the minute, gardening, pets, all the usual. The link is down in the description to join the Control.Reese Discord. I do have, mentioning that last name there, Jaruzel, or Jarazel, Jerusalem. I do have a late-breaking story from him for you this week. So, this is on comicbook.com. This is literally just this second landed. And if you have an Amazon Prime subscription, and indeed a GOG account, GOG.com account, there are 2 classic Bethesda games that you can get for free in the very near future. And these are Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas. They are the complete Game of the Year editions, and the Ultimate Edition, I will say. So on October the 16th, New Vegas will be made available, and it looks like I say, this has literally just landed, so I haven't even read it properly yet. Fallout 3 is available now, I think, by the looks of it. So you need to go on to Amazon Prime Gaming, if that is something that you have, and get your keys for GOG.com, and then you will own the GOG versions of those games forevermore. And not 2 games that I've ever had the chance to check out, I will say. I know people will find it shocking that I've never played any of the Fallout games. I think I would actually really, really enjoy them. I just haven't, like I say, I always get distracted and just haven't had the time to sit down and play them. So perhaps this is finally my opportunity. Which is the better one? Is it Fallout 3? Is it New Vegas? I'm not quite sure. Anyway, thank you for letting us know about that. And that is indeed all that I have for you for this week's Ramble. Of course, this goes out on my second channel on YouTube, youtube.com/Reese Rambles, and on the podcast platforms as well, primarily Spotify, but from there it does get pushed out to all of the podcasting platforms. I have a YouTube channel, Control-Alt-Reese. Not much going on over there at the moment due to some bigger changes that I will be talking about in the very near future. But that's all I have for you for this week's Ramble. So thank you once again for joining me, and I'll see you again same time, same place next week, 2 minutes to midnight UK time on Friday night. Bye.